You are listening to Talky Nonsense, a grab bag of bonus discussions, short and long, about issues small and large. And yesterday, Smokey went and saw the Lord of the Rings musical, and she has thoughts again.
So what I saw was not the original show. In 2006, I think it's called Lord of the Rings, A Musical Tale, was first done in Toronto and Chicago, and it was a huge, sprawling production. It had a cast of 65, which is pretty big. Cost $30 million, which is a lot. Hamilton cost like $12.5 million, I think. And it was 3.5 hours long. It was originally 3 acts, so 1 per book, as you would expect. It was loved by some people, like Lord of the Rings fans. It was critically panned, and it did lose a lot of money. It was revived later as a kind of a scaled-down version, and that is what I saw at the Auckland Civic Theatre, which is a very beautiful theatre. And that was 24 cast members. It was much, much smaller, much less special effects driven. The original show had like amazing sets. The floor of the stage was kind of going up and down all over the place. There was aerial work that the elves were on wires and on silks. And there was just a lot, which didn't always work in the production. Things broke down, and that was, regrettable. So this was perhaps a bit more foolproof. And
simpler is better.
Well, sometimes.
Especially when you have moving parts.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's a shame. After I watched it, I went back and looked at on YouTube. You can, if you kind of do a bit of sleuthing around, find a few clips, very, very grainy, like 3-pixel clips of the original show. And it
was the Dark Ages, Little Smokey. It's surprising they had cameras at all.
It is, and they didn't do a pro shot because people didn't do pro shots back then, and that's a shame. And I would love to see it. Like, I like maximalism in shows. I think it's a shame that there's this trend to just strip everything down and do, like, minimalist versions. Did it with Sweeney Todd, they did it with a lot of things. And it does make it cheaper, and it means you can go to more theatres, and that's kind of nice, but also...
And it means you appeal to a wider audience because people are so dumb and have such short attention spans.
Well, no, it's not. The book isn't usually scaled down. It's just the set. It's like a cheaper, smaller version.
I see.
But, theatre isn't just the book. Theatre is a visual medium, and things like the helicopter in Miss Saigon.
Very disappointing when that disappeared.
Yeah, they just made it a projection, which is kind of lazy.
Lame.
Or the bridge in Les Mis.
How can you even have Les Mis without a bridge? Outrageous.
Yeah, so I was looking forward to a couple of moments which I had seen on YouTube, and that they weren't there, and that was sad. At the start of the second act, in the original show, there's kind of a facade, I think sort of a ring-shaped facade around the entire stage. And the first thing you see, like barely lit, is Gollum, who is on a wire, and he's crawling down the outside of this kind of net-like, branch-like facade, head down.
Like a spider.
Kind of like a spider. It would be very difficult to do. Very, very, very effective, very cool moment, which is now gone. But such is life. And anyway, in general, I loved it. In general, it was a very, very fun evening. It was very cool, but it was interesting to see because I am a big fan of the movies and the books. I mean, the books first, obviously.
Obviously. I didn't read the book until after I had seen the movies.
Yes, but we...
In fact, that is my usual operating procedure. I watch the movie to see if the book is worth reading.
That's a dangerous game. Anywho, they obviously did base the musical on books. They didn't just try to copy the movie, and that is good. So 2006, it was a few years after the movies had come out. But you can also see there were bits where they were obviously influenced by it. And in some cases, that made it very weird to watch because you could see they were either copying the beats of the movie or they were deliberately trying to avoid something that the movie had done, even though that dialogue was just from the book and they could have done it and it would have still been technically not copying the movie. They were trying to make it different for the sake of difference.
Yeah, I can understand why you would do that. You got also dumb members who just have seen the movies and been like, oh, yeah, just copy the movie.
Yeah. And watching it, it was just a little bit surreal because some of the characters were quite good. The Gandalf they had was a very good Gandalf, and he had a very Ian McKellen vibe. His voice was very similar. So the whole Balrog scene was sort of like, yeah, seen that before.
How did they do the Balrog?
It was weird. I don't think it worked as well as some of the other special effects, which were amazing. It was sort of a big sheet, like a big cloth over the floor of the thing and people under it, and so they were kind of lifting it up, and it was wibbly wibbly, and then it had projected onto it flames, and I think at one point eyes, which they should have maybe not had the eyes. So it was a bit weird.
Not cherub.
Yeah.
Balrog.
Well, just 2 eyes, but...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it would have been better as kind of an amorphous shape rather than trying to pretend it was like a distinct creature in there. And then he kind of fell down, I presume went under the blanket, as it were. It would be very, very difficult to do a Balrog. I watched it with some friends. Some of them thought it was cool. I thought it was, But that said, the special effects were amazing in general. The best thing about the whole show, I reckon, was the Black Riders. They had guys in your traditional Black Rider costumes, running about, but they were puppeteering these skeletal horse heads that were the creepiest things you've ever seen. They had glowing red eyes, and they would just sort of gnash them at the audience and weave and bob about, and they went down the aisles. And with the music and the lighting and everything, it was really effective. It was really, really good, really creepy. Loved it. Was glad we hadn't brought Morris, because he would have been scared. And also Shelob. Shelob was terrific. Shelob was a puppet. I couldn't even tell at the beginning that it was a puppet. So she comes out of the back of the stage, out of her lair, huge, like really, really big, takes up like a third of the stage, and was doing all these amazing things with her legs. And I was like, that cannot be remote controlled. The set is so dark that it takes a while before you can see that there are completely black-dressed ninja stagehands who are controlling the legs, but it's so well done that even after you see it, you can kind of unsee it.
Shelob and her ninja-controlled legs.
Yes. And then when she's wrapping Frodo up in her silk, there is no actual silk, but she was doing the leg thing, and the actor who played Frodo was just kind of twisting himself, like rolling on the stage in this jerky way, and it looked so good. It was perfect. It was great. So I loved that. I think they did a really good job with that. I really wish that they had kept in the aerial silks for the elves, because the Lothlorien sequence in the original was amazing. You know, elves live in trees. They were all just like up there, living as it were in the trees, and Galadriel was singing and spinning around. And like, it would be such a hard role to cast, but it was very magical. And current Galadriel, for some reason, they decided to dress her in gold trousers.
Oh, yeah, your classic elf gold trousers.
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe this is sort of a holdover
That's what Tolkien
from
had
the
in mind
Ariel
originally,
thing.
right?
And it wasn't even a holdover from the Ariel thing, because I went and looked it back up, and I'm pretty sure she was actually wearing a dress even during the silks. It was like she's the Lady of the Wood. She isn't a member of a Swedish pop group, you know?
Yeah, hard to imagine Tolkien thinking of them wearing trousers at all.
Yeah, and that was one of my big complaints, actually, was the elves. I think, in general, like, the Hobbit costumes were beautiful, really nicely done. The elf costumes were weird. They were kind of, I don't want to say cheap looking, but they could have been a bit more subtle in colour and texture, I think. They looked a bit costumey, and the whole elf thing, I think it's very hard to portray something sort of ethereal and otherworldly well, and I don't think they did. I think there were some bits where Arwen was all, I will give up my immortality and love you forever, and it didn't come across as meaningful and wonderful. It just came across as a bit like, okay, a bit cringe.
Slightly teenage.
Yeah, it had been done before. We've seen this. But that said, I think when the Lord of the Rings movies were at their best, they were when they were most respectful of Tolkien, right?
It's difficult to disagree with that.
I know Peter Jackson's talked about the more they kind of rewrote the script, they would keep getting closer and closer to Tolkien's actual words, because they were like, hey, this actually works quite well. And I think the bits that haven't aged well in the movies are the kind of clunkier, cheesier, tackier
like
bits that he put
Legolas surfboards down a stair using a shield.
Exactly. And I think the same is very much true of the musical. I think when they were doing Tolkien, it was done really well. And it worked really well. And they obviously, somebody involved in the production had a lot of love for Tolkien, because there were things in there that you wouldn't get just from sort of a cursory reading of the book or from watching the movies. They had done the research. There were real Elvish greetings. There's quite a lot of Elvish, actually. There are, like, references that were misplaced but still Tolkien. Like, you know how in The Lord of the Rings it begins with Galadriel saying that line that was originally Treebeard's?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the time, watching that for the first time, it's like, whoa, that is cool. Like, they know their stuff, you know. They're repurposing it, but they know it. There was a similar thing in this where Frodo says to Sam, your love has been given to the morning, but I have chosen the evening, referencing the fact that he wants to stay with Rosie in the Shire, and Frodo wants to go away with the elves who are leaving Middle-earth. And it's not the right place for that line, but it kind of works, and it's kind of cool to know that they had that little nugget of Tolkien knowledge. Things like that. And that really gave me a lot of grace to forgive some of the more egregious things that they did, of which there are many, which we will discuss. But they did some cool things, like Galadriel, Arwen actually sings a hymn to Elbereth. The song is called Star of Erendil, and it's done as an actual hymn. Like, the hobbits and everyone are praying when she sings it. It's like a group prayer, which I think Tolkien probably would have got a kick out of.
Praying to Elbereth, eh?
It fits in with his mythology. I mean, he wrote literal hymns to Elbereth. It's correct. And just little things like Legolas having dark hair. It's not that Legolas even necessarily does have dark hair, but that's a very controversial thing in Lord of the Rings circles. Did you know?
I did not.
It's like, people have written screeds about whether Legolas's hair is canonically dark or fair.
Okay.
His head is described as being dark against the sky, against the starlight or something at one point, but that could just be because it's at night time. His father Thranduil is described as having golden hair, so maybe he does have golden hair. It's like a whole, the various races, we don't know who his mother is, so that doesn't help. And is he part of the Sindar, or like, it's very deep. I just like that they didn't automatically go with the blonde thing. Oh, another nice bit is when Galadriel is discussing with Frodo about how he longs for the sea deep inside, and she longs for the sea, and it kind of foreshadows the fact that he's going to leave with them. Just little moments like that show that they obviously are real Tolkien fans, and that is nice. There was also a reference to Tom Bombadil. He did not make it into the show.
No.
But just at the end, this is kind
Poor
of...
Tom Bombadil.
Well, he never does. But
never does.
Yeah. Right at the end, Gandalf's doing his little recap of going to, the ring has been destroyed. Well done, Aragorn's king. Good for you all. And he just sort of says, I'm going to go now and have a good old talk with my old friend Tom Bombadil, who's older than the whole world and very wise, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, that is in the book.
Yeah, it just...
Talk to Bombadil.
Doesn't seem like...
Such as I have not had for...
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, why would you put that in when he's not referenced before or after in the musical? But in the audience, a large number of people were like, yay! When he said it, was like, yo, Tom.
Well, there you go. That's probably why they did it.
It was lovely. I think it was just a little call-out. And Bill Ferny was in it. Mrs. Bracegirdle got a surprising number of mentions for someone who barely exists in the book. So that was all very nice. On the other hand, there were some things that were just dreadful. Mary is played by a girl. Mary is female in this production. She was great, actually. She was a lovely little actress. It didn't matter as much as I thought it might, but I just object on principle.
You could see how they might just not have been able to find enough.
A boy.
I guess I'm thinking of high school plays.
Yeah, no. They could have found a male Mary. I'm pretty sure it was just one of those, oh no, not enough women in the show.
Right.
Which I have no patience for. More significantly, they basically leave out almost all of the Two Towers as a book. They had to make cuts for time. They left out Rohan.
You can see why they might. If you just kind of munge together the Fellowship and Return of the King, you can kind of make it work.
Yeah.
A few things happened, and now here we are.
Yeah, so what they did is Frodo does decide to leave with Sam. Boromir dies defending Merry and Pippin, but they're not actually captured by orcs. They run into Fangorn, and then they're the ones that rouse the Ents.
Okay.
Legolas and Gimli don't even go anywhere near Fangorn. They just head off with Aragorn and so on to Gondor to release the king from the spell. So they kind of munged together Denethor and Theoden into one character who really didn't need to be in it at all either, because there was not much done with him. Like, he's there in a chair looking kind of grim, and Aragorn's like, look, here is Narsil, I'm back. And he's like, yay, and I'm happy again immediately. Gandalf isn't involved in this. And then he's part of the battle, and then he dies. Like, he's a very nothing character. Plus, he's played as like a double role with Bilbo, and the guy who played Bilbo was a perfect Ian Holm lookalike. He was really, really good Bilbo. And so to see him again being Denethor / Theoden, it was just kind of off-putting. He just looked too Bilbo-ish.
It's a very strange choice to make.
Saruman and Elrond were also the same guy. It's common in a small cast.
No, I wasn't. I didn't mean the choice of casting. I was thinking of the character. I can sort of understand the idea of munging Theoden and Denethor together, except for the fact that their arcs end completely differently.
And then Faramir, of course, was not there at all.
Ah, poor Faramir. Always short-shifted.
Now, speaking of that, the character assassination that really annoyed me was Pippin. Pippin, is kind of the worst.
He kind of is.
That's okay. But he's the worst in that he is sort of impulsive and naive and speaks out of turn. In this
kind of an ass.
Oh, a little bit. I mean, he improved.
In the movies, he's actually better than in the books. In the books, he doesn't say... Okay, so far in my reading, he hasn't said a single kind thing.
Oh, he gets better.
He's been really disrespectful, quite honestly.
Yeah, he's a bit of a punk, but I like Pippin. But in this one, they made him very much the kind of comic relief coward. It was a bit like Ron in the Harry Potter movies. So he was always just being afraid of things and saying, oh, let's go home, let's go back. And Mary had to be like, come on, Pippin.
Lame.
And he also had this fear of trees, which I assume they kind of got from Gimli's dislike of Fangorn. And so, when they were in Fangorn Forest, he didn't like it. And that was another weird thing, actually, is they did the Treebeard thing, which I assumed they'd cut, because if you're cutting stuff, let's face it, Treebeard is a thing you might cut. They did that just on an empty stage with pretty dappled lights and then booming voices and instrumentation which were meant to imitate Old Entish. But no actual Ents. Like, you didn't see any Ents.
Interesting choice.
And, they acted it well, and this is a thing that happens on stage. I think it would have been nice to maybe have a few Ents. And in the original production they did. They had stilts, people on stilts.
Yeah, you could see how you could do that.
Yeah. So that was, a choice.
Yeah.
I'm sounding very negative here. As I say, I loved it, and we'll get to that. They kept some bad takes from the movies, and I wish they hadn't. like Aragorn being kind of unwilling to take the throne, that whole thing to kind of give him an arc of
It's a modern thing, man.
Yeah,
I can't conceive of someone who's just heroic and doesn't
Yeah.
need to really grow into being a hero.
Yeah. Plus he was bald. I didn't like that casting.
That is unfortunate.
And his costume was a little bit Peter Pan.
Balding Peter Pan Aragorn.
Yeah. And they sort of played up Sam and Frodo's tension over Gollum, as did the movies. And it was there in the books a bit. You know, Frodo was more merciful than Sam. But they kept that in, and they kind of brought forward Frodo's fall. In the movies, he is struggling till right at the end. Then he finally snaps and, I'm keeping the ring at the cracks of doom. Here, in the tunnels with Shelob, he kind of has this break moment. And it's not just done as in the ring is tempting him with power. It's all framed around the elves. They really play up, and I kind of like how they play this up in general. The fact that if the ring is destroyed, the 3 rings will also be destroyed, and the elves will leave Middle-earth, and it'll be a world now much less magical and wonderful. And that's kind of the sacrifice you have to make. And that is in the books, and it is kind of cool to see it played up, but it
does sound kind of inevitable, though, in that the elves are sort of all leaving already.
Yeah, well, they sort of see the writing.
Like, their power is fading. They're
Yeah.
not going to hang around even if the ring wasn't destroyed.
Yeah, but so in the musical, they make it, that is Frodo's temptation, is he can keep the ring and then he'll be able to save, because he loves elves so much, he'll be able to save them and make it all better. It's not quite right. And
Sam was the one who was really into elves, not Frodo.
Oh, no, Frodo was.
Was he?
Yeah, he was always a little bit elvish himself. He was a bit...
Yeah, he
a bit
spoke
distant
elvish, and he'd learned
from Bilbo.
a lot of things from Bilbo, but
Yeah.
it was Sam who was the real elfish fanboy.
Yeah, he was a fanboy, but Frodo understood
Mr.
them more.
Frodo, it's elves! You know?
And actually, they did a really nice job of that in one of the early songs when you see that the elves for the first time. It was a very lovely moment. But I wish they had just kept Sam and Frodo pretty tight till the end, as it was in the books. You don't need to have
that's so
fights.
weird.
There was enough drama.
Indeed.
They also-
Famously,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings has a lot of drama.
And they also really played up how corrupted Frodo was early on. Even in the first act ends kind of the end of Fellowship. He was already kind of crouching a lot and fingering the ring a lot and looking quite Gollum-y, quite creepy a lot. I didn't hate it, but it was more than in the books. Another interesting thing is that they almost had the Scouring of the Shire. I had hope, because there was talk when they kind of cast out Saruman that he could still do damage and he was still dangerous. And I was like, oh, maybe. And then they get back to the Shire and there's a little speech about how it is not what it was, and there are factories and they have kind of a prediction.
It's been scoured.
Well, it has been wrecked. Hang on, do you think Scouring refers to the destruction? I'm pretty sure it refers to the washing away of the destruction. They scour the evil
Interesting.
out of it.
I kind of always assumed that it was... I guess I was maybe in my mind combining scarring with scouring. It was the scarring of the Shire
Oh, no, I mean,
by evil.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like they are cleansing it of
Okay.
the wickedness.
Interesting.
Yeah, anyway, so they get there and it seems like Saruman has already left. I guess he got scared and ran off, but his factories are all left and the trees are all gone and stuff, and they have to replant. And they do actually have the box of earth from Galadriel that Sam had, and that was quite nice.
So I'm going to reveal my ignorance here, but in the movies, Saruman is killed when his staff is broken.
He's stabbed by a Grima.
Yeah, and he
It
falls
might only
off,
be in the extended edition.
thank
And he
him.
falls off and gets skewered on
gets skewered.
Yeah, it's
This does not happen in the book.
No.
So the Scouring of the Shire is actually led by Saruman in the book after his staff is broken.
No. Again, the scouring is the cleansing. So
You know
the
what I
book-
mean.
In the book, he and Wormtongue sort of slink off from Orthanc in
Yes.
despair. They go to the Shire. They set up this kind of little factory thing, and he becomes this little
I see.
petty little tyrant of a petty little
Yeah,
place
okay.
and enslaves the hobbits, and it's very, very sad. And Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin come and save the day and, show their true... I mean, it's a wonderful moment. It's amazing. It's the culmination of all their experiences, and Merry and Pippin are like
Quite.
the real heroes. And then I believe Grima stabs him, and it's a very ignominious death.
Okay.
He turns into smoke for a second and sort of just disappears. Yeah, but in the play, he's gone, and the other hobbits are like, we must go after him and, kill him and stuff. And then Frodo does this very weird little pacifist speech, and this really annoyed me. This is one of my bigger problems with the musical. He has this little moment of, we shouldn't go after him because war is his tactics, and that's not the way. We have to stay here and rebuild. But if we go and fight after him, we go and fight
That all
him.
seems completely unnecessary. They
Yeah,
could have
it's
just
like-
had Grima kill him.
Yeah, but it's like, they didn't actually have Wormtongue in the musical, so they couldn't have.
Well, they could have just had a hobbit kill him.
Yeah, they could have. But the point is, it's a bit rude to be all like, war is evil and war is his thing, when you've literally been kind of saved because Aragorn went to war to give you time to get the ring story.
Seems a bit ungrateful, honestly.
Yeah, like, we're not anti-just war, actually. We're not a fan of war, but this seemed like a very modern, anachronistic, silly little PC take that didn't need to happen. So I was disappointed in them for that.
Probably motivated by their female Mary.
Wow. The battle scenes were
less epic than the movies.
I mean, again, it's a cast of 24, I think you said. And I think that the movies did overplay the epicness and hugeness of the battles a bit. I don't think Tolkien puts as much emphasis on the visual grandeur and splendor, but this was a really small stage. And it was, I think, if you hadn't read the books, I think you'd be a bit confused at a few points as to what exactly was happening with various last stands and fights. They did the best they could. The orcs now.
Did they have a lonely barricade?
They didn't even have a lonely barricade.
Wow.
There was a chair that got tipped over at one point.
Oh, impressive.
Yeah. And the orcs I didn't like. I don't think it fit in with the visual aesthetic of the show. They had kind of trousers and gas masks and hoodies, and they looked a bit Mad Max / Street Fun.
I can kind of see how you might get gas masks if you were going with a slightly more diesel punk vibe.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's smart
it does
because
fit with what Saruman was doing.
Yeah, and many cast members were
weird
playing
aesthetic
various
choice.
roles, so it would be much easier to put a gas mask on than to make yourself up as an orc.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I get it, but I didn't like it. I think it should have been more Middle-earthy. That's it. With the cast, small cast, they were amazing. They could all act, dance, sing, do sort of mild acrobatic stunts, and play instruments, some of them multiple instruments, because the orchestra was on stage. It was them. There was no orchestra. It was just the cast.
Well,
so
now I'm starting to question whether they could find a male Mary. Maybe that's why. Maybe it wasn't a forced decision.
There are many people
You're
in the
describing... Okay, is this an international thing? I thought it was a New Zealand thing.
No, this is an international thing.
Oh, I see.
Why it came here, I presume
that's what I was...
Yeah.
I guess because this is Middle-earth.
I guess so. We got lucky. Yeah, but they... Like, Arwen actually played the harp. That was cool.
Okay.
Gandalf at one point was leading the battle with a huge big drum. That was actually a very cool moment. And another point, he had this tiny little lutey-type guitar thing that he was playing. And Pippin went around for most of the show with this giant cello kind of hanging from his neck, which I didn't realize you could even do. He was just playing it on the move. Yeah.
Just like in the book.
Well, I mean, you accept a certain suspension of disbelief. So they were very talented people. There was guitars, there was didgeridoo, I think, at one point. Just all sorts of stuff. Trombones, trumpets, things I hadn't
Your classic
even heard of.
Tolkien instruments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the trumpet you need for battles.
Obviously.
What else can I complain about? I think it would be very hard to do Tolkien without things being clunky at some points and kind of over-exposited at some points and a bit of weird pacing here and there. And that did happen. There were moments where you were just like, okay, you've hit that beat, you've hit the next beat, get on with it. You know, you were just kind of getting through intel so that it vaguely was coherent. And I think that the deaths didn't feel sad in general. Theoden / Denethor's death didn't feel sad because A, we didn't really know who he was, and B, we didn't really know him.
Yeah.
Just like, oh yeah, he's gone. But even Boromir and Gandalf, well, Gandalf, you could hardly tell he was dead. It was sort of just disappeared. And yeah, again, I don't think that was very well done. Boromir, they tried to make a big thing of it, but like, you just don't have the time. You know, the movie, you get to know him over several hours. The books, of course, the other books. I didn't.
Plus, the movie really drags his death scene out by having the multiple arrows and lots of angles.
Yeah, well, actually, in this one, he was stabbed.
Oh, okay.
Legolas used a bow, but of course he didn't have arrows, so, you know, it kind of worked in a mass fight scene, but they probably thought it would look a bit goofy if he was, you know, shot by invisible arrows, so they stabbed him.
You could do real arrows.
Very carefully.
Yeah, stunt arrows is a thing.
Alright, well, they didn't. And I'm, as you know, I am a crier. I will cry. I did cry during this later on, but I didn't cry at the deaths. I just was like, okay, whatever. So that was...
You're a weeper.
Weeper. Yeah.
Criers walk through cities calling things out.
I could do that.
But you don't.
No. Well, anyway, having been very negative, the staging, even though I would have preferred to see the maximalist expensive version, that was really, really cool. It was all kind of wooden. There were ladders all down the sides, which we used. There were a couple of levels. They had one of those moving rings on the middle of the stage that Hadestown has and Hamilton has, and I think everyone has now.
Like the Chinese restaurants have.
A lazy Susan for actors. At this point, I think it should just be made part of every stage. It's just like, we do that now. That's how stages are.
Does seem like a logical progression, like an evolution of the stage.
It wasn't used, you know, particularly creatively this time, I don't think, but, you know, when they were doing the Council of Elrond and they were all sitting in a circle, that just gradually moved around so you could see people's faces, and it was cool. And there was a platform that came up in the middle, and that was, you know, all thank when Gandalf was stranded on the top, and various people were on it for various reasons. Unfortunately, it was a bit clunky. Kind of.
How did they do the eagles?
They did not do the eagles.
Ah.
Just didn't have them.
Gandalf escaped off stage.
Yeah, he did. He But,
Okay.
yeah, he talked about it afterwards. And a few things were like that. Things happened off stage. And at the back of the stage, it was all wooden, and there was this big knot in the wood, a big round circular knot. And that was very cool because at one point it had like a black light on it, and you could see there was a moon kind of shining on it. At another point, it was the Eye of Sauron. So they used projections pretty cunningly, I think. So it was in flame. At some point it was removed completely, and it was just like a circular hole through which Galadriel sang or people appeared or whatever. Everyone was climbing ladders a lot. Gollum was climbing around all over the place. Gollum was amazing, by the way. He was so good. Like, he was far and away stand out. Everyone loved him. And he sang.
Famously, in the movie, he didn't. Although in the movie...
He did, actually. He sang a little song about
didn't
fish.
Sing. Oh, yeah. How does it go? So juicy sweet?
Yeah. When you wish to get to fish, so juicy sweet. We've been to that pool where he did that, you know.
You have.
Have you not? It's in, like, the Taranaki National Park.
I don't think I've been to Taranaki National Park. You must have gone when you...
No. When we went to the snow with the kids.
Oh.
You've totally been.
Wow, I don't remember that at all.
I mean, it looks like a pool. It's not that exciting in real life. Anywho, I liked how it opened. When you come in, we're hoping to have a party, which is Bilbo's 11th birthday party. And they're all just playing games on stage. And like, they've got cup and ball games, or there's quotes, and they throw the quotes to the people in the audience, and you try to do it. So it was very interactive. And there were hobbits sort of just wandering around the aisles and chatting to people. And, you know, the sort of thing that can be very cringeworthy, but it was actually done quite naturally and quite nicely. And it was all very warm, beautiful lighting, very hobbity feeling. Even after the show was supposed to start, they just kept happening. And eventually Bilbo wanders out, and somebody leads everyone, including the audience, in a song of Happy Birthday. And then it just very seamlessly
Which
becomes...
nobody paid the royalties for, I bet.
Probably not. Wait, didn't they?
Criminals.
No, I think they fixed that now.
Huh.
I think you can
That
sing
would
it.
explain why I've seen it in something recently. I was like, that seems illegal.
No, it was like a groundbreaking moment for the movie.
Wow, okay.
And so, yeah, very, very seamlessly.
The post-millennial future continues to march forward.
Yeah, that wonderful song. But you sort of, the show invisibly starts almost, and that I thought was very, very nice. And it's all very Hobbit-centric. I like that it was deliberately written to be a Hobbit-focused show. I thought some of the cuts they made to move the plot along were actually quite clever. So when Frodo is in Bree and gets stabbed, it just goes straight from him putting the ring on. That was actually done quite well as well. So
Frodo gets stabbed in Bree?
No, he gets stabbed in Weathertop.
Right.
But in this, he puts the ring on in Bree. You know, it's a big thing. Yeah. And then because you can just sort of instantly change the set, Bree just sort of disappears from around him. The Black Riders appear and stab him, and it doesn't really matter where it was because he's been stabbed and he now has to get to Rivendell. And I was like, that's a good way of saving time. The best song, I think, by far was Now and For Always, which you should all look up.
It is a good song.
It's a beautiful song. It's Sam and Frodo.
Well, the Song of Durin, which I know was unrelated to the musical entirely, was invented more recently, but it's also really good.
Yes, there are a lot of good Tolkien-inspired songs out there from many, many musicians. They did have a sort of song about Durin in the show, and I thought that was a very interesting choice, given how many cuts they had to make, to take time out and have in Moria this little song that Gimli sings. It's like, really? Now? Okay.
Maybe they wanted to give the dwarves their due.
I guess, and same with in Bree, there's the Cat in the Moon, which is a fairly extended sequence, like, dancey number. It's cool, but it's like, why are we spending time on this and not on...
I was curious about the Cat in the Moon. Was Tolkien just riffing off that existing song, or was he implying that was like the original version? Because, it's meant to be a sort of mythical telling of Earth's own history. And,
yes, I imagine so.
Because that would make that a really old song.
Yeah. And they did a good job, I think, of tying together all the threads. So during Now and For Always, which is Frodo and Sam singing about songs and legacy and hobbits and just listen to it. It's cool. But they're alone, except that actually the whole cast kind of comes and stands around them and plays instruments and watches them. And there are moments like that where it's sort of people who aren't there. Like Rosie Cotton appears quite a lot, just kind of watching, playing a flute, whatever. Keeps her fresh in one's mind. And at the end...
Constantly thinking about how Sam is working towards getting back to Rosie Cotton.
Yeah.
Right.
No, she was mentioned a lot, and I think it was quite nice. But Galadriel as well, who is this kind of constant unseen presence in the books, and it makes sense to have her being there in the background, because she was watching over them all and working her subtle and ill-defined influence, kind of. When the ring is actually destroyed, and in that last battle scene / ring-destroying scene... she's singing a song and tying it all together and making it seem very much... It's almost like intercuts in the movie, but it's all done together on stage. Hard to describe, but it's quite cool. And I think it's much more effective than if they'd just kind of done bits separately. So that I loved. Then there were a few things which I just found weird. Like, I want to find someone who made the show and be like, tell me about this. One was that they replaced the green dragon in references with the blue ivy. They kept talking about how the blue ivy was their pub. Why? I don't know.
Is perplexing.
Yeah, not a thing. And the other thing was that hobbits throughout the show were wearing sandals. They did not have hairy feet. They did not have bare feet. They had like Birkenstocks.
Very strange.
Yeah, and it was kind of emphasized because they did this little thing. It was obviously, they made it like part of Hobbit lore that instead of shaking hands, hobbits would do this little kind of foot thing. They'd sort of jump and touch feet. It was hard to explain. It wasn't playing footsies.
It sounds very creepy.
No, it was sweet. And it left their hands free to do things, so that's very useful. But you could see their feet a lot. So why? I don't know. I don't know if it would just be too hard for them all to dance and stuff in bare feet, maybe, and climb the ladders. Like,
but then
why not be uncomfortable?
Why not give them sandals that had fur over the top so they looked like they had furry feet?
I don't know. Now I'm wondering if they had pointy ears as well. I don't think that they had kind of floppy, hobbity hair over their ears. So.
You could understand not having to put on the pointy ears all the time.
Yeah, I don't think they did. They also didn't make much of an effort to make the hobbits short and the other people tall, because you kind of couldn't, because everyone was playing different roles. You know, you can't have, like, if you're going to be an elf the next minute, you just have to be the height you are. And sometimes people were kind of higher up than others. Gandalf was pretty tall, and the guy who was Saruman and Elrond was pretty tall. But, like, the hobbits weren't that short. That was fine. It worked. You just go with it.
Did they have a mouth of Sauron?
No.
How did they do the Aragorn drawing Sauron's attention?
They said they were going to do it, and then they kind of turned around and were like, here we are, we're going to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sauron himself was actually much less of a presence than you might think. Like, there was the Eye of Sauron that appeared a few times, and, the Dark Lord
in the
was
book, he
mentioned.
is kind of the same. He's not really there.
Yeah. He just wasn't even mentioned as much as you might think. Like, the Black Riders were kind of more of a dominant evil. So, yeah, I really love to take
Does the Witch King of Angmar break Gandalf's staff in the most travestied?
No.
Good.
Doesn't come up.
Because that was really obnoxious. Don't understand that scene at all.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I would love to take someone who's never read the books.
Peter Jackson didn't understand that scene at all.
Yeah, well.
Here's Gandalf. He came back stronger than before. He's way more powerful than the Witch King of Angmar. He's going to break his staff.
Yes, well. But yes, I would love to take someone who had never read the books or seen the movies and just make them watch the show and be like, tell me what you think happened. Because they definitely get some of it, but I really don't know that they get all of it.
It would be very difficult to put it into a coherent story that you could watch.
But then again, it doesn't matter. Like, we live in a world where people do know the story.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
How much do you have to present a coherent, self-contained story when everyone already understands significant amounts of the tropes and the story arc and the purpose of it all?
Interestingly, I was looking something up and found Tolkien himself. Someone had suggested making a musical version, not a musical, a stage version, I think, when he was still alive. And he was like, no, it wouldn't work. He thought that because a musical or a play or, Broadway or whatever is already this kind of artificial world, already kind of a semi-magical world, I guess, that adding another layer of artificiality of magic on top would be too much. He didn't think you could do it. I don't get that because I think it's actually been done many times. Like, there are plenty of fantastical worlds that appear on stage. You've got Mary Poppins, for example.
Yeah.
Like, everyone accepts it. If anything, it maybe makes it easier because you already know the rules don't apply, so...
He had some funny idea, Tolkien.
Yeah. That said, I don't know that he would think that this was successful. Necessarily.
He probably wouldn't have thought the movies were successful either.
I think he was a bit of a curmudgeon and very protective of his own work, which is absolutely reasonable. He just probably hated everything.
Can you imagine? You could harness the power of him spinning in his grave over the
Rings of Power.
Rings of Power.
Yeah, and the Hobbit movie.
And justly so.
Yeah.
Oh man, the Hobbit movie. The people I meet who were like, oh yeah, we watched the Hobbit movies, they were pretty cool.
I know.
What is wrong with you?
I know.
If you like the Hobbit movies, you're a bad person and you should feel bad and you should also stop listening to us because we don't want you.
You're allowed to like the bit at the start of the first Hobbit movie with the dwarves where they sing the song. And you're allowed to like the Riddles in the Dark scene because those are, again, actual Tolkien.
Canonical.
And they were done very, very well. And what a shame, because if you'd done the rest of it that well, it could have been amazing.
Rant over.
Yeah. You're also allowed to like Bilbo's dressing gown because that was quite cool.
Well, Smokey, any other thoughts, or does this conclude your review of the Lord of the Rings musical 2024 edition?
I think that they did a jolly good effort, and I had a wonderful time. I am critical in the way that fans are always critical, but I mean, in general, yes, I would recommend going and seeing it.
Jolly good effort, 5 stars, would see again.
5 out of 5? No.
Oh, 4 stars would see again?
Probably.
3.5 stars would probably see again.
Probably 4, just given the difficulty of it. The sheer audacity of what they were attempting. I'd say
4 stars for audaciousness would see again.
Yes, all right. If you have seen it yourself, let us know what you thought, because I am interested.
Indeed. Come on our Signal group and tell us what you think.
And go to YouTube and find the cast recording and listen to the songs, some of which are lovely. As I say, Now and For Always is nice, but some of the Lothlorien ones as well. Wonder is quite good.
Right. Well, until next time, you know how this works. Someday we'll bring out our head coverings episode. And until then, you have this random review of a random play to satisfy your longing for strange parasocial relationship.
Yes, hordes of desperate fans.
This has been Talky Nonsense.